Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Deliberate Dropout. We got another fun topic today. We're going to dive in, Mitchell and I, on being just the grass always being greener on the other side. It has to, for whatever reason, people get caught up in this infinite loop of, oh, what if I could do this or what if I could do that? And honestly, it just leads to chaos and destruction. So, Mitchell, what are some opening thoughts? How can we get this topic started? What would you tell a young adult? Why does that happen? And what is the negative outcomes, I guess? Let's start there.
Yeah. So a lot of different ways we could tackle this. I'm going to give you one pointer that I've learned and relearned over my career in life. So find one thing you can be good at and give it everything you've got. Do that first. Before you can be an expert at everything, you got to find one thing you can develop some mastery in. And for a lot of reasons. One, gives you a strong foundation. It gives you a template for how to navigate through the uncertainty of life and build success in the face of uncertainty. It gives you a certain baseline of credibility as somebody who could see something hard through, something difficult through. It gives you confidence. It gives you momentum, all of those things. But I think what is much more common today, and I think this is the strong temptation, is to sort of give up on things before you've gotten the lesson that you set out to get, or before you extract the value from some new endeavor that you set out to tackle. And I think that is it's not only not as useful, but I think it's actually potentially harmful for you, because it sends this negative signal of like, I'm somebody who's flighty and jumps around or can't make up my mind. And that becomes a negative signal if that's how you approach your life, especially if that's how you approach your early career. Sometimes it's more valuable to just see something through for a little bit longer than it is to, just jump around because your interests change. There's effective ways to do both, but I think that the tendency is just to be like, well, I'm not happy, so I'm going to go do something else now. And it's okay to want optionality, but there are some more effective ways to pursue that than others.
Absolutely. And first thing that comes in mind for me is people will distract themselves with pleasure if they don't have purpose. And purpose doesn't have to be some crazy, you're trying to change the world, right? It can just mean a sense of direction, right? Yep. It doesn't have to be this crazy, I'm trying to, solve world hunger. And I know early on, I've had that flighty jumping, hopping here, there, like zigzag. It's not linear, bro. It's like zig, boop, boop, boop. And when I reflect now, because I do have a little more stability than I did early on, and it all came from a sense of no purpose. I'm always looking for some type of dopamine hit because I don't even know what I want.
Yeah.
And I guess one way to solve that almost is creating identity-based habits. Make sure that your habits are aligned with your identity. If you're not if you want to be a good runner, just make sure your habits reflect that. Now, if we take that to your career, right? What are some habits that you would say, Mitchell, are some people can take to have the right ones in your career? Because it's almost like career success is a superficial thing that only certain people can attain, but it starts with your habits. What's a good identity to start with?
Yeah, so some of the early things like show up early, stay late, crush it in your day-to-day job. Make sure you understand the requirements, responsibilities, and sort of the results that are expected from your role or your job. And then over-deliver on those. Like you do those things, that's an early way to, get some career wins, build momentum. But I think you can't, anything you're doing, regardless of, how far along you are in your career, there's going to be a learning curve when you start out. And I think that you've got to fight the urge to give up before you break through the barrier of incompetence. Like everybody's on a learning curve when you're starting something new. You got to break through that. You're not going to be great at everything right off. You're probably going to be great at some things right off. You're probably going to be more a natural fit for some types of work, or some particular skills are going to come easier to you, and that's fine. But not everything is going to come perfectly easy for you. That doesn't mean you're in the wrong place. It may just mean that
Yep.
you need a little bit more practice. You need a little bit more context. You may need some, put in some extra effort. And that's sort of the critical thing, regardless of where you're at in your career. You got to do that. Now, don't suffer if you stuck around for, 3 to 6 months and you're just terrible at the job and you're not getting better and you're working your ass off and you're doing everything you can to get better. That's a different scenario than being 60 days on the job and being like, I'm not doing well and I have it all figured out. You don't have it all figured out. Some things take time. They have a steep learning curve. And so you got to punch through that before you're worried about all the other things you're going to be good at. Like, be good at the thing at hand.
Yeah, it's like digging 3 feet from gold, right? Like sometimes you're just like, you're right there. You just got to push through. But other times, to your point, if you just freaking suck at what you're doing, just get out of there, right? Now, when we think of this, like the broad topic of the grass is always greener, right?
Yeah.
Do you think everybody falls into this and it's just the elephant in the room? I certainly believe that, but is that the case? Or you think like some people just got it figured out? They're like, Kobe knew he was Kobe. He just went to the gym every day and like he just took care of business. Like, what is the frame of mind? I'm almost asking.
Well, we'll keep Kobe and MJ in a league of their own. Like, some people just have a level of confidence and greatness in them and like the determination that it takes to punch through. So like, let's talk to the everyday person who's out there working 9 to 5, trying to get by and doesn't feel like they have that extreme level of self-motivation. I would say that, one, I don't know if it's universally true. I know my experience has revealed to me that anytime I get bored, I start thinking about other things, like what else could I be doing? And it's not just boredom. Sometimes it's lack of certainty or clarity about, how to break through the specific challenges. Like sometimes hard works makes you start thinking about what else could I be doing. I think that's a universally true experience that
Yep.
humans, we are, I don't want to say lazy, but I think we're wired to find the path of least resistance. Like, how do we get the most for the least amount of effort? And I think that's sort of a universally thing. Maybe that's part of our evolution, or programming, whichever you prefer there. But I think that one of the big challenges in the world we live in today, with technology such as it is, with the media, with social media, with all this shitstorm of distractions swirling around, is that we do live in a time and world that seems very driven by instant gratification. And that is a huge challenge to overcome. Like, you've got to find a way to shift your time horizons from, I want to eat, sleep, all the other things. I have all these needs I want fulfilled right now. You can't fulfill them all right now. And in fact, if you try to always sort of take that hedonistic approach of like, I'm always just trying to fulfill desires instantaneously, you actually will begin to work. It may seem counterintuitive, but you're going to begin to work against yourself on the long term. You do need to do something. You need to play some games that are really long. And there are some games you can play short. Like, you do need to have a roof over your head, probably. There is probably a certain blanket of security in terms of like, where's my next meal coming from? Where am I going to sleep tonight? Do I have, utilities on in my house so I don't freeze this winter? Like, there's a basic level of sort of Maslow's hierarchy. You gotta make sure you cover those first before it's probably possible psychologically to think beyond the here and the now. But you've got to find a way to think on a longer time horizon than this weekend, or, what am I doing next month? Like, if you can figure out a way to break past sort of the instant gratification cycle that is just so prevalent, and especially prevalent among like young adults who are just always on social media, that's going to be a superpower. If you can think on how do I win at this long game that's going to take me 2 to 3 years to really see dividends start to pay. If you can do that, you're gonna be head and shoulders ahead of the average person you're up against in whatever domain it is.
Yeah, average Joe Schmo that's on Instagram all day. And it's like, it comes back like nations are born stoic and they die Epicurean, right? Like, a lot of people, like, it takes stoicism to get the ball rolling. And there's nothing wrong with changing the way you think. Once everything's kind of in place, you could have some fun. It's not like you're like cold showers every day. Like, you could chill out a bit. But I think in the beginning, because there's so much resistance that you're facing, and then you got the monkey brain. We're still like wired for instant gratification. That's probably not going to change anytime soon unless you grew up different. But it's getting rid of that hedonism, getting rid of that desire, getting rid of the instant gratification. And if you could push through the resistance, that is the hardest part, in my opinion. And I know, like, it's even like when you run, your body literally thinks you're dying, right? But like if you push through like this weird part when you run, I can't really pinpoint it, but there's like a good 2 minutes where you literally think you're going to die.
Yeah.
And if you push through it, you get the biggest dopamine hit. And it's such a good moment because you thought you were going to die and you didn't. And it might seem like a really stupid example, but if you could take that mindset and throw it into your career, it's going to freaking suck. Sometimes you're not going to want to wake up and write 20 emails a day if you're in sales, or sometimes it's just like, dude, I got rejected 100 times. But if you just push through that resistance, one day you will lead others so that they don't have the same problems you did. And I think that's the biggest disconnect. People don't want to suffer, and they think suffering shouldn't be that way. We're here to suffer. It's what are you suffering for? And are you willing to help others suffer less? And if we could keep that in mind, we probably would be in a better place 100 years from
now. Absolutely, on probably a macro scale, but on the individual scale, I think let's break that down a little bit. I think number one, do hard stuff. Like we are not wired in a way that our lives become better as a result of pursuing comfort and ease above all else. Like we need to battle that resistance. It's critical. Mm-hmm. I think there's a book called, I think it's called The Pursuit of God. It's by a Christian theologian named John Piper. He lays out sort of this philosophy for what he calls Christian hedonism. And I like sort of this framework, whether you identify as Christian, religious at all, or spiritual, whatever. Like, let's talk about some of the fundamentals. It's about sort of a different kind of hedonism, not the here, now, desire, this, daily here and now stuff. But it's like how to reorient yourself to higher, more noble goals. In Piper's case, like the pursuit of pleasure from serving and seeking God. But you could do the same thing. Like, what's the most noble goal you can think of? If you can shift sort of your time horizon from, I find pleasure in satisfying all my instant impulses all the time, like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's the destiny you're on track for. But if you can find a way to sort of reorient yourself to, I find the most satisfaction out of pursuing the absolute wildest, most difficult, most important, most noble goals. And I know what I'm going to have to become and who I'm going to have to become in order to achieve those things. And you can figure out, like, that's the satisfaction I'm aiming for, because I know this is going to suck. I know I got to climb this mountain without a rope. But by the time that I get to the end of it, I'm going to be able to look down. I'm going to be so proud, and it's going to be worth all the other like petty little things I had to give up as a result of this higher pursuit. That's the kind of hedonism. If that's hedonism, then call me a hedonist. But that's the kind of sort of reorientation that I think is critical. And it requires breaking past sort of the instant gratification into this sort of like delayed gratification, longer term game mindset where you realize you can't have everything now. They say Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, good things do take time. Fine wine takes time to age. Like all the other different dad jokes and metaphors I could think of. Like you can't have it all now. Some things are going to take, sort of a brick by brick effort. And if you can find a way to focus on that prize, and again, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be times where you misstep, or you're like, shit, is this worth it still? But if you can find a way to sort of recover and like continue to focus on sort of that higher aim and always be reorienting yourself toward that North Star, your North Star is going to change over time as you make progress. Likely, you're going to find some other thing that's the higher priority project.
Absolutely.
Problem you want to work on. But like always sort of having that thing you're working towards, even if it's a simple thing, simple in terms of like, it's not something you don't know how to do, but it's going to take a challenge to get there. That's fine. But if you're always worried about just like the here and now and like the instant gratification things, especially like the day to day when it comes to your career, like you're going to have a bad time. You're going to run up. You're going to injure yourself professionally in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. Some closing thoughts. I guess one thing that comes to mind for me is the Iroquois tribe back in the day. They were used to bathe their kids like when they're like 9 months old in freezing water, and they did it to prepare their children for the hardship of life. And I think that message is missing in today because of all this instant gratification. You don't even go to the movies anymore. When a movie comes out, you watch Netflix. You don't even need to, like, everything's Uber.
Zero friction.
Zero friction. And it doesn't prepare you for the hardships of life. And I think if you could embrace hardship, if you could embrace chaos and destruction, and you're like the flag carrier and you know how to move through that, that is ultimately what's going to propel you to the hedonism that you mentioned with the great author's name that I forgot. But that's that book, we are going to have the book in the comments. Like and subscribe. But that's what comes to mind. Prepare yourself for the hardships of life, because if you don't, nobody else will. And you're just going to turn into this instant gratification zombie.
Nobody wants that. And that's a great closing here. I'm going to have to go head to the gym now and battle resistance there, because I definitely don't want to be an instant gratification zombie. I want to go do the work, do the heavy lifting to make myself a better person today coming off this podcast. So thanks again for listening to Deliberate Dropout. It's always a fun time when we get together, hash it out, and we're going to be back again soon. Smash the subscribe button. Leave us a comment if you're on YouTube, and we'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening.